Hey guys, it's been a while since I've done a sit down and just organic conversation video. So I wanted to kind of make a two-part video here, and I've kind of debated making this video and posting it for a while. So I wanted to address two separate things. I wanted to address how we handle setbacks, trauma, relapses in healing, especially in the brain retraining journey. And I wanted to also not just have it feel like it was maybe any kind of negative messaging or any kind of symptom-focused messaging. So I then had this idea to kind of rediscover some self-care and to rediscover how to come back from a setback and to combine creating a challenge of sorts, a personal goal I'm working on with this topic. So I'm going to start with discussing kind of what setbacks can look like in the healing journey, but I also want to layer that and let you guys know that this video is going to be the first part of a series where I do want to show and document and also welcome other people to try to do a yoga everyday challenge with me. So that's going to be a little bit of this journey and this awareness that I want to create with this video as well. So it's a little hard to talk about. I know I haven't been on this channel as much as I was, last year and for the last couple months, starting around the summer. So my daughter had a pretty bad accident this summer. She is doing okay now. She still has some things that she's healing from, but going through that kind of collective trauma as a family, worrying about my daughter, seeing setbacks that she has had in her chronic illness journey because of this accident that she had. She was in the hospital, really set me back a little bit in my recovery as well. And I think it's really important, even as someone who, I'm a therapist, I'm a chronic illness and chronic pain therapist. I literally have and sell and market, my YouTube channel here and a paid limbic system healing program, Psyche-Soma-Sol. And so it's really hard for me to admit and to know how to talk about myself having a setback or a relapse. But that's what happened, right? We think about how the limbic system operates, and I think it's really important to know that we don't heal in a bubble, we don't heal in a vacuum. And so we're going through this brain retraining program, and it's hard to even think about and conceptualize it, so it's hard to talk about, but I know that honesty and being vulnerable is so important to help others to heal, right? We go through this healing journey, and I always say we're never fully healed. Like, don't look for the cure, don't look for when I'm healed, because we're constantly in a cycle of just being alive, and part of being alive and living is we are never going to achieve perfect health, but we can try to find balance. We can try to find the best health that's accessible to us at any given point in time. So we can always be working on a healing journey and walking a healing path. No matter how hard we're working or how much progress we've made or what we put in place in our life to try to facilitate healing, unexpected things happen. Traumas happen, scary things happen, accidents happen, or bad things happen. And that is going to send our nervous system and our limbic system into survival mode, into fight or flight mode. We're going to have cascades of those, those hormones and that adrenaline and that cortisol. And especially whether it's something that happens to us personally and that's a trauma, or something that happens to a loved one, where we then give ourselves to helping that person, or we get caught up in a bigger trauma, even if it's a collective or global trauma, right? There's a lot going on in our world. We can feel those effects just as much or even more so as maybe the initial thing that caused us to become sick. So whether we initially were dealing with sickness or pain from, a viral infection or a bacterial infection or mold or, any of the things that make us sick, I am blanking here because it's just, like I said, this is just a raw, honest conversation. Even if we've addressed that through brain retraining and we have shifted ourselves successfully most of the time into parasympathetic nervous system out of sympathetic, even if we have created our daily routine to be conducive to healing, and we have changed the way we think, and we've changed that inner dialogue, and we've changed the way we talk to ourselves, and we religiously every day do that brain retraining script and be outside and practice meditation and yoga and be in nature and time with our loved ones and all the things that we talk about here and in our program, you can definitely get thrown a curveball, or many of them at once from left field. And it is our body's natural ability and also part of what makes us able to survive. We don't want to villainize the role of the amygdala and hippocampus, where they sound the alert and they're like, uh-oh, something's wrong. What do we do? Go into survival mode. That's how we're able to survive in this world. So it's not all bad. In my case, I was amazed at how well I was able to kick into like adrenaline supermom mode and, really take care of my daughter and kind of push through different symptoms to really be there. But now that it's been a couple months out, noticing the effect that maybe that had, noticing pain flare-ups, noticing nervous system dysregulation, noticing just a variety of symptoms related to cortisol and inflammation and anxiety and all of the things where maybe it wasn't noticeable in the beginning, but now that things are starting to balance back out, you notice the after effects, the residual effects. And I think it's also important to note, though, that in some ways, going through that trauma, and even like afterwards and kind of reassessing, okay, what does our life look like now? Like, let's regroup. I almost thought I would be worse off than I was. I was afraid of going into a really big flare. For those of you that don't know, I am in recovery from chronic fatigue syndrome, from MCAS, from POTS. I still struggle with symptoms of Lyme and neurological Lyme, a lot of different chronic pain issues. And I was worried that I was going to completely spiral. And I think that the saving grace, really, even though we can't avoid this fight or flight mode and maybe some reactivation of different systems and symptoms, trying to view it as the way that my body and my brain had to react to hold space for crisis, to care for others, and to kind of kick into high gear to survive, that is actually something that I'm grateful that my amygdala can do. I'm grateful that my body can adjust. And I will say it was kind of interesting looking at it now, having to film this video and thinking, how am I going to summarize this journey of what happens if you have a relapse, or what happens if you have an event that kind of re-triggers things. I guess in some ways now I'm thinking, wow, I could have really tailspun and really gone back and really fallen backwards. And I didn't fall backwards that far. And I think I have brain retraining to thank for that. I have the tools that I use with my coping skills and my time in nature, and a lot of the work that I've done to regulate my nervous system, I think made it easier to say, wow, yeah, I was solidly encamped in fight or flight mode and there was a lot of scary stuff. But now my baseline is more parasympathetic. And so it was easier to go back to that state once the immediate threat was over. I was already really well versed in the self-talk and talking to my amygdala and going to my hippocampus and saying, okay, now you don't just have scary trauma memories stored, you know that you can go back to a good place. So now it's time to tell the amygdala and the limbic system, calm down, stop thinking this way. There was a crisis, it is over now, crisis averted. Let's go back to how we were. We don't have to work this pattern of catastrophizing. Just because we're having a flare-up of those symptoms doesn't mean that all of the disease models or processes or pain or symptoms are back, that they're in control. It just means they're flaring up. And I know they're flaring up because my limbic system has become dysregulated. I know that maybe there's some inflammation and some cortisol and some adrenaline that are flaring these symptoms, but I also know deep down inside, this is no longer my baseline. This is no longer my status quo. So the idea that the brain retraining, and I've been saying this for a while, but I haven't quite had an experience where I could fully feel it or articulate it or explain it. For me, at least, the way that I think we should be talking about brain retraining is it's not a cure-all. It's not a permanent solution. It's not the only solution we need, but it does allow us to take back control of what our baseline is. It allows us to be in control of our our narrative of our healing, our narrative of our health picture in general. And so I was able to say, okay, I'm having a little setback. I know when I'm triggered. I know when my limbic system is dysregulated. These are the symptoms that usually come up. So how do I work on adjusting my life for this? And I might put some videos in here too. You know, I had a couple of months where I was using my adaptive tools again. I might have, using my walker, using my back brace more often. There were some really bad pain flare-up days, and I think it just makes sense, even just for an example of part of brain retraining is also your physical habits and ways of being to address symptoms. Just having that change, having my physical day-to-day change, flared up some pain symptoms, but it's understandable. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, this is like this forever, I'm just completely done, it's like, okay, how do I deal with this now? How do I kind of slowly come out of this and work on identifying that this isn't forever. This doesn't have to just downward spiral endlessly. We can figure out how to regain equilibrium. So, I hope that me sharing this is going to help others who might be like, oh, I don't know, I started this brain retraining journey and then this happened and I had all these symptoms flare up, and so it just must not work. And it still works. It's, at the end of the day, brain retraining is finding ways to regulate our nervous system, to have more resilience in our nervous system, to understand that our nervous system is on a continuum. And instead of hanging out constantly in sympathetic, we also can't live in parasympathetic. We have to find this room in the middle that we can move around day to day just to function in the world. And in fact, polyvagal theory talks about this social engagement piece in the middle is where we actually find the most healing, where we're just kind of turned on enough that we can interact, but we're also relaxed enough that we can feel safe so that we can actually move around and engage in the world in a meaningful, healthy way. And that's where I think it's so important to see it as something that's fluid. And maybe when we're at our sickest, we are pretty much locked in and entrenched in the fight or flight mode, the sympathetic mode. So it can feel like, really, like, how do I get this car out into gear that hasn't started or run in years? So it feels like you're stuck, but really it is a fluid continuum. And I think brain retraining reminds us that even if we get pulled back into a dysregulated state, we know that it's easier now that we've kind of like loosened up the gears to come back over and to shift ourselves back when we need to. So along those lines, I do also think that there are other things that are important. I do think that no matter how good we get at our brain retraining, it is important to realize that we all feel a certain way when we're just doing the bare minimum. And if we can add anything to that routine, to that system, even with brain retraining, it's like, okay, we already have that. It's just changing our thoughts, working on our nervous system. We know that if we are eating healthy foods, we know that if we are moving our bodies, if we're spending more time in nature, spending more time with loved ones, that any little bit we do, we're building up and we're building up and we're building up. It's building our resilience. It's almost building like a protective bubble around us so that when things do come in that could otherwise really trigger a relapse or a nervous system response, we have a better barrier and a better protective circle around ourselves. So along those lines, one of my goals for, the next couple of weeks or months, I don't know how long I'm gonna go, is I've really recognized that I am missing the role of yoga in my life, and I'm missing what that's like for me. And I taught yoga for years. I am a yoga therapist in training. I have my 500 hours. I've led teacher trainings. And I've really fallen away. I don't have a daily practice anymore. I don't even have a weekly practice half the time. And it's because my practice has had to shift, in part to my pain issues, my symptoms, but also just routine has just been off. And I'm recognizing, and again, screen time isn't good for limbic system regulation. Addictive patterns aren't good for spiraling, for catastrophizing. I'm spending a lot of time on screens. And it's not good for our nervous system state. It's not good for where my thoughts go. It's not good for a lot of those things. And I was thinking, what self-care patterns could I put back in place that feel really meaningful to me, that give me the most value for my time? And physically, I also want to feel better. So my goal, my intention is to start doing yoga again every day. And that might look really different for me now than it used to. I mean, this might just be stretching. This might just be deep breathing and mindfulness. It's not a full yoga practice, but I would like to invite you to start your own daily practice with me, whether it's yoga, meditation, breath work, anything like that. I'll post some ideas on here, but start something every day. It could even be reading or music or time in nature, sitting in the sun. Starting a daily practice for yourself, and we can go on this challenge together to recalibrate our nervous system, to strengthen back a day-to-day routine that is going to bring us back to a healthy state in our limbic system and our nervous system regulation. So thank you guys for listening. I hope that it resonated or helped some of you to know that, you know, anyone can experience setbacks, and it's how we come back from them and what we can do in this healing journey. And I can't wait to share some more of this with you guys and do this daily challenge together for healing. And let me know how it goes in the comments, and we will get back onto posting more regularly. Thank you guys so much for taking this journey with me as always, and I hope you're experiencing a lovely day full of healing.